Hello, race fans, and welcome to Summit Point, West Virginia for round 3 of the Ottercar AI Racing League. This race should definitely mix things up compared to what we've seen with our standings so far for the past couple of races, because this is a road course. And believe it or not, these NASCAR Welland Tour modified cars are not exactly designed to be run on road courses. But the drivers came out here today to do their best, and it will definitely be interesting to see if some drivers that have been a little bit unsuccessful so far do a little bit better on this wildly different discipline from what we have seen for the past couple races. After all, this is the wild card round after a reason. But that aside, let's go ahead and take a look at our starting lineup presented by Hybrid Development Team and the Rainbow Society. Starting on pole here at Summit Point, driving the number 717 Reddit machine is Pete Comedy, and starting to his outside is Stick in the number 53. In third place, in the number 8 entry, is Piper, and in fourth place, in the 666 entry, is Zoe. In row 3, we have Pav for the Rainbow Society Team 1 in the number 12, and Sarah Saviron in the 117. In 7th, we have Med with Octave in the 11th in 8th. In 9th, Arvo Soborov in the number 429 machine, and to his outside, Humongous in the number 621. In 11th is Frosty Film in the number 7, one of our previous race winners, and to his outside is Ben Dover in the 69, who I believe finished second in our previous race. In 13th place, previous race winner Felix Murray in the 217, with August to his outside in the number 21 in 14th. In 15th is Thirds in the number 3 entry, and in 16th is Maroon in the number 25. In 17th, Dragon Space Queen for Blazed and Drunk Drivers in the 37. In 18th, Bloody Wolf in the 93. In 19th, Lake in the 330 entry. In 20th, Madcap in the 38 for Blazed and Drunk Drivers. 21st to Valnar for Blazed and Drunk Drivers in the 776. 22nd to in the number 420. 23rd to Drop Table Roster, our wild card man himself. And rounding out our field here today is Halo in the 0 entry. That said, this is a track longer than a mile, so we only have one pace lap before we go green here, friends. So as we round these final corners, we will be going green flag racing here at the Summit Point Raceway for 30 laps. Each lap roughly 45 to 50 seconds under green flag conditions. Under caution, they're about a minute and a half, so that's about how long this race will be lasting. But we're going green flag racing here at Summit Point, West Virginia. Pete Comedy off to a pretty good lead, moving a bit to try and block the high line, which seemed fairly successful, but thankfully no contact was made. The drivers seeming to be navigating through the S's well enough. Well, it looks like Med in the 1 is off, as well as Felix Murray, and I'm not even sure who else was in there. Felix making contact with Med. That's not how you re-enter the track safely. Everyone is still going, though, it looks like, so there won't be any caution. But I would not be surprised if Med got engine damage from that start right there. That was quite the attempt to re-enter the track. I know these cars are very hard to control on grass. These may have very large wheels, but that does not mean that they stick in off-road conditions at all. But that's our first lap in the books. Peak Comedy is your leader. A little bit of bumping and banging here at the back of the pack between Drop Table Roster and Halo, but they seem to be starting to get themselves sorted out a little bit here. It does look like Med has gone into pit lane for the engine damage that she just got from Felix Murray's very unsafe attempt to re-enter the track, so that might just be the end of her race here today. Back up in the front, Peak Comedy is still our race leader. Been doing a pretty good job of holding the field off. He has a half a second gap around him right now, but that could be closed very quickly. Like I said, these cars are not made for road racing, and it becomes very apparent, especially later on into the run, because these tires degrade very quickly. This is a lot different from our traditional ovals that we go to, especially considering that there are some very sharp right turns here, like that one. These cars are not built to be doing that, but they're still making it happen. And it's basically, it's very difficult to make these cars do what you want them to sometimes. And in practice, we did have lots of drivers later on in their runs locking up their right front tire and spinning out into the grass. It is a little bit of a travesty. These cars shouldn't be doing right turns. That's a sin, and I'm sure whoever invented the NASCAR Well and Tour Modified is rolling in their grave right now. But that is not going to stop us from running them here at the Summit Point Raceway. This here Jefferson circuit actually is not even really used for car racing in real life. It is used for track days and training and things of that nature, but it's pretty rare that they host actual races on the Jefferson circuit. And when they do, it is normally motorcycle races. They definitely do not race anything close to the cars that we are racing here. But they seem to be making it work fairly well. It does look like Pav is starting to gain a little bit of ground on stick there. He might have backed off a little bit on corner exit. But they almost made Nerf bar contact coming out of the final corner. Everyone managing to navigate the S's fairly successfully. Turn 1 is where we have seen drivers have a bit of difficulty. It's a very long straightaway, one of the very few straightaways where you actually shift this car into its second gear, and then you immediately have to slam on the brakes and downshift again. So it can be a very tricky corner. And along with that, this final corner is just as perilous for the same reason. You have a long straightaway, one of the few straightaways where you're actually going fast enough to have to upshift, and then as soon as you upshift, you get to the corner and have to downshift again. Looks like we did have a little bit of 2x2 back in the back. It looks like August maybe was attempting to push it too wide a little bit. They went back into single file there, though. Things have single filed out a bit, and that is understandable. There is a lot of potential for people to be making mistakes on this track, and sometimes that's the best play, is just to be patient, wait for the car in front of you to screw up, and that's when you capitalize on it and make the pass. That said, how about we take a lap on board with our fastest driver that time by, which was Piper in the number 8 machine. We will let them come by one more time, and then we will get a full on-board lap with Piper in the number 8 machine, just so y'all can really see what these drivers are dealing with here at the Summit Point Raceway. Let's go ahead and switch to Piper's cockpit cam as he rounds the final corner here. Piper setting the fastest lap of the race with a 45.22 earlier on. Going down into turn 1, really having to crank that wheel to get this car to actually make right turns. It is very much squealing in protest, as you saw Pete Comedy, our race leader there, lock it up a little bit and slide, but he managed to keep it going. A lot of these turns are very easy to overblow if you're not careful with your throttle control and your braking and your shifting. You're not supposed to be shifting these cars mid-race. They're not designed for that, especially since they only have 2 gears, but sure enough, these drivers are doing it throughout the corners, and somehow they're making it work. No one has blown their engine, and that's kind of a miracle. Looking a little bit further back, Octave, currently one of our closest battles on the track, followed closely behind by Humongous in the 621 entry, and right behind Sarah Saviron in the 117. These drivers still managing to play nice for now. Big emphasis on the for now part. There has been a bit of heated debate back in the paddock as drivers have had lots of incidents with each other. We do have a few drivers having to be driving in their backup cars after trouble in practice. But so far, everyone, now realizing that there is points on the line, is not ready to completely ruin one another's championship hopes. For the most part. I don't know what Felix Murray was doing at the very start of that race. He's currently the last car on the lead lap, and he is very much struggling right now from that impact with Med. That surely did a number on his engine. You can hear it. It's definitely not sounding right, but he's keeping the car on the track, and that alone is half the battle sometimes. Med, unfortunately, still down on pit lane getting repairs. 17 positions down from where she qualified. That looks like that her race is going to be over for today. She only managed to complete a single lap here. Back up near the front, Zoe and Sarah Zaviron currently are 2 closest cars on the track. Sarah actually is currently having one of the best runs that she has had all season so far. It almost looked like she was trying to get around Zoe on the high side there, which probably would not have worked. You do not want to be on the outside of that corner. It's a very easy way to get your tires in the grass, and when you get your tires in the grass here, it's basically game over. It is incredibly difficult to try and recover once you start sliding. As you can see, those brake rotors inside Zoe's 666 entry glowing a very bright red through these corners. These brakes not happy, and of course the hotter they get, the less effective they're going to be. And you never know. Brake failure is a possibility here. Whether or not these drivers are able to actually manage their stuff well enough to avoid brake failure is one thing, but it is something that they have to keep on the back of their minds. Brakes are a big issue, tires are a big issue. Even managing your engine temperatures is a huge issue because, like I said, you're shifting this car while going full speed, and you don't want to be shifting this car. That's not what it's made for, but unfortunately, that's the fastest way around the corners, and these drivers are willing to risk their equipment for a bit of extra speed. And can you blame them? That's just how racing goes. Humongous in that 621 machine, currently up 2 positions from where he qualified. You can't really see the brake rotors glowing in that 621 because they conveniently match the color of his rims. Also, it looks like we have trouble for Frosty Film. Looks like he got some pretty big damage. He's going to not enter pit lane. Interesting. Let's see if we can take a look back and see what happened to Frosty there. Frosty in that number 7 entry, looks like he just locked up his right front and couldn't recover from the slide and just spun it out. Thankfully, no one else was involved in the incident, but that's definitely not what Frosty's going to want, since that has now put him back down to the 23rd position as the last car on the lead lap. Currently still the closest battle on the track going on between Zoe, Sarah Saviron, Humongous, and Octave, all battling for the top 5 position. These 4 drivers have been kind of at it with each other all race here at the Summit Point Raceway, as we are now halfway through the race, 15 laps to go. Zoe trying to take a little bit of an alternate line through that corner. And I don't think that actually really got her any speed. I'm not sure how well that corner worked for her, especially as now Sarah moves up to try and overtake on the outside, which also did not work. The outside lines through these corners generally not the fastest way around. You want to be on the apex, as it looks like Valnar might have had a little bit of trouble because Felix and Frosty have passed him. Let's see if we can see why Valnar lost so much position. Oh, sure enough, Valnar suffering from the same issue that that Frosty had of overdriving the final corner, and he just could not save it. But he's got the car going still. So far, none of these incidents have had particularly bad damage for these drivers, except for the incident with Med. Med, however, was able to limp her car back around the track to pit lane. With road course racing, unless there is major debris on the track or debris cut or the tow truck has to be called, they try to avoid throwing cautions because honestly, wrecks are like on a very small part of the track. But yeah, there are generally no cautions except for very major incidents or when the tow truck needs to be called. Further back down the line, though, Halo in the 0 entry, it looked like Blue D Wolf locked his tires up there, but Halo in the number 0 entry, currently one of our biggest movers this race, currently up 6 positions from where it qualified. Halo started the race in last, and it is up to the 18th spot now. And right in front of it, in the 420, oh you know, up 5 spots from where he qualified. So while these drivers are still a bit stuck in the back of the pack, these drivers still are also our biggest movers here tonight, going up from back in the 24th and 23rd positions up to 18th and 17th respectively. So they're probably happy to see all of these cars wrecking out whenever they do. Every position gained counts, even if it isn't from pure pace. Sometimes luck is a factor that is involved in racing. Up at the front, Pete Comedy crossing the line here. 10 to go. Pete Comedy has led every lap so far here tonight and has a pretty sizable lead going for him of almost 2.5 seconds here. As long as he manages to keep up the pace he's going without burning off his tires, he could be set to lead every lap of the race. But that said, he did have trouble in practice. He was one of the drivers that did overdrive the corner and wreck it in practice, so hopefully he has learned from his mistakes in the past and doesn't repeat them. Because if he does, that could spell a big disaster for him. A lot of drivers have pretty much been going all the way back to the very tail end of the field when they have an incident. It's looked like there might have been a little bit of trouble back in the back. I'm not quite sure. Maybe not. It does look like everyone is going pretty fine. I thought I saw a car stopped on the track, but I might have been mistaken about that. 9 laps to go here at Summit Point Raceway. For the most part, everyone has been playing nice. Currently, our closest battle on the track is between thirds Bendover and Maroon. Thirds in the number 3 entry, fittingly. Thirds currently up 3 positions from where she qualified. Actually, pretty much all of the drivers around her right now are up 3 positions from where they qualified. Maroons is up 3 positions. Lake is up 5. Bluety Wolf up 3. So all in all, everyone has managed to get a little bit of spots, at least, from the incident at the start of the race with Felix and Med, and the later incident with Valnar. And speaking of Med, look at who just left pit lane 21 laps down. She's back out on the track. She's making it happen. She's getting a bit of extra seat time in, at least, for the next race. Practice goes a long way, and even if you are 20 laps down, there is no reason not to get the extra seat time. In that number 1 entry, she has been having a bit of difficulty these past few races, and she's definitely not going to be happy after qualifying 17 positions higher than she is right now. Piper currently getting a little bit of pressure from behind by Stick in that number 53. Stick and Piper have been both battling pretty well throughout most of this race. These two drivers, very similar on pace. They actually set identical best lap times. Last time by, Piper was just a little bit faster than Stick with a 47.17 when Stick had a 47.09. But it does look like Stick is getting a better run off of some of these corners, so it is very possible that he manages to catch up to Piper in these final couple of laps. Another very close battle on the speedway between Bendover in the 69 and August in the 21. August up 4 positions from where he qualified. August has been having a fairly quiet season so far. August kind of has pretty much always found himself somewhere in the middle of the pack. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes a quiet season is exactly what you want, because sure, you can be making headlines for getting race wins, but you also could be making headlines for being involved in a very spectacular and very dangerous crash. So, honestly, up in the 10th position right now, sometimes just quietly riding your way in the middle of the pack is exactly where you want to be. That said, as we come around the checkered flag, or the checkered line again, Pete Comedy still your race leader, a 3-second gap between the field behind him, 4 laps to go here at the Summit Point Raceway. It does look a little bit like Pete Comedy has this in the bag. He still has plenty of opportunities to make a mistake, though, so we will have to see if he can keep this car pointed in the right direction for 3.5 more laps. Further back in the field, thirds is getting caught up on just a little bit by Maroon. These drivers starting to fan out a little bit and see if they can take some different lines to help save their tires a bit. This far into the run, the handling of these cars is starting to get pretty rough, but they're still managing to make it work. More drivers fanning out a little bit. Bloody Wolf also trying to break the draft a little bit down the front stretch. Maroon and thirds side by side through the S's here. These two drivers managing to keep from making contact, which is honestly pretty impressive. The S's are not a place that you want to be going too wide, but these drivers, they managed to make it work. Despite all of the spectacular wrecks that we had back at Hickory, I'm very impressed that these drivers are managing to keep things, for the most part, pretty clean. That said, 2 laps to go now, and things are definitely going to be heating up. There is not a lot of opportunity to make things work anymore, and Valnar has spun out yet again. And he does manage to get the car going yet again. That said, we don't actually have overtime here in Ottercar, so if the caution came out now, that would be the end of the race. So thankfully, he manages to keep the car going. Bendover, still pretty close in battling with August and thirds as they round the corner to get the white flag. If these drivers are going to make a pass, it's going to have to be here, race fans. There are no more second chances. But as Peak Comedy does not round the final corner, he's not on the track where I thought he was. He goes around the final corner. He makes the car stick. Peak Comedy takes the checkered flag here at the Summit Point Raceway. Further back in the back, Arvo and August trying to make something happen. Both these drivers finish where they were in their respective positions. It looks like just about everyone completes their race fairly cleanly. Valnar having a little bit of trouble. He's not even going to go across the line in really bother at all. He decided that's that. He's parking it now. But that said, after leading every lap, Peak Comedy is your race leader in that number 717 machine. Peak Comedy managed to lead every lap of the race after qualifying on pole. One of the only drivers to not change position. The only other 2 drivers that finished where they qualified was Arvo Soborov, who started and finished in 9th, and Madcap, who started and finished in 20th. That said, let's go ahead and take a look at our official race results. Our race winner by a 2.5 second margin in the number 717 machine was Peak Comedy, followed by Piper in the number 8 and Stick in the number 53. In 4th place goes to Pav for the Rainbow Society Team 1, and 5th place to Zoe in the 666 entry. 6th place goes to Sarah Saviron in the 117. 7th place goes to Octave in the 11. 8th goes to Humongous in the 621. 9th to Arvo Soborov in the 429. 10th to August in the number 21. 11th to Bendover in the 69. 12th to Thirds in the number 3. 13th to Lake in the 330. 14th to Maroon in the 25. 15th to Bloody Wolf in the 93. 16th to Dragon Space Queen in the number 37. 17th to in the 420. 18th to Halo in the number 0 entry. 19th to Drop Table Roster. 20th to Madcap. 21st to Felix Murray. 22nd to Frosty Film. 23rd to Valnar. And finally, rounding out our field in the number 1 entry, 20 laps down, is Med in 24th. That said, that's all we got for you here at the Summit Point Raceway. Next week, we are, I believe, heading to the Rockingham Speedway. And the Rockingham Speedway, I believe, mile-long track. So definitely a very different oval experience to what we've had so far with these short track races. Rockingham is almost as long as this road course was, but is an oval. So there's definitely going to be a lot of full throttle, high speed drafting action next week at Rockingham. And not only that, but we also will be having a special guest commentator joining us for the next 3 weeks. So look forward to hearing someone's voice other than mine. And who knows, maybe he'll even be better at commentating than I am. But that said, that is all we have from the Summit Point Raceway here in Summit Point, West Virginia. Thank you all for coming out. This has been Ottercar Season 1, and I will see you all again next week at Rockingham.